Hi, everyone. Welcome to Cupixel Studio. My name is Haley, and as Nicole said, today we are going to be drawing the perfect rose with Cupixel Smart Trace technology. So before I even say anything else, first things first, if you haven't downloaded the app, please go ahead and do so and enter this promo code here, and you'll get 2 weeks free on the app, unlimited access to everything. So I will walk you through how to get started on the app in just a moment, assuming that you all might be kind of joining now. We'll get to that in just a second. But really quick, I want to say I'm joined by Nick Acevedo on the cameras. So, so he is showing you everything that I'm doing from all these different angles, so you can get the full look. And so if you're going to be creating with me in real time today, great. But you can also come back to this tomorrow on demand on YouTube, on Learn with Michael's YouTube. So the purpose of this live class or experience, as I like to call it, is to, of course, show you how to use Cupixel Smart Trace technology. And then, of course, we'll work together to bring our outline to life with these alcohol-based markers. These are my absolute favorite tool to use, so I'm very excited. I do have quite a few colors in front of me, different shades of red and green. I also have a black and a blender. Doesn't mean I'm going to be using all of them, but I have all my colors that I could possibly need right here. I also have a pencil for tracing, an eraser, and a kneaded eraser. You don't need both, but I like to use a kneaded eraser just to kind of soften my lines before I go in with color. And then I also have a piece of paper from a marker pad, 6x8. You can use any size, but I would definitely recommend using this marker kind of paper because it's great for how saturated these are. We'll be doing a lot of layering and blending to create a realistic look. So this is the best kind of paper for it. But any size, just keep in mind that, the bigger the size paper that you're using, the longer it might take you to, complete your rows. So I also have a device stand with my phone already on the stand. You will all get this stand if you stick with the membership after the free trial. If you don't have the stand yet and you want to get a feel for the app before you go ahead and get the stand, you can use a cup. You can just grab any tall cup or anything tall that you can place your phone flat on top. You can trace that way. So again, just to reiterate, Shirley is monitoring the chat if you have any technical questions, but she'll also reiterate any questions to me if you have any questions specifically for me or what we're creating. So I think we can jump right in and get started if we're ready. We're tuning in from Boston, by the way. So any fellow New Englanders, let me know, say hey. But I do appreciate you all so much for joining me here in real time. I'm excited. Let's jump right in. So when you open the app, you'll see this is your main feed. What we're going to do is we're going to just jump right into My Studio. All the stuff that you see on the app, these are artist-led experiences. So you'll get something like this, an artist like myself walking you through the entire creation process. But luckily for you, you get me in real time today. So we're just going to go straight to My Studio, that plus sign icon at the bottom center of our screen. We'll tap that, and you have a couple tabs up here. You've got a photo tab and the gallery tab. I wanted to show you that if you would prefer to work with a photo of a rose to get, more of a realistic, recreation, basically, you can definitely use that and use a photo reference. But today we're just going to use an outline. So if you go to gallery, you'll see we've got quite a few roses for you to choose from. And you can see how you can just make a simple outline and transform it into something beautiful. So this is really just the tip of the iceberg. Hopefully this class will inspire some other ideas of what you can create with the app because this tracing just really helps us get a jump start on any creation. So I'm going to choose this rose here. When I see that green check mark, I know I'm good to start. And because I have my phone on the stand, I'm going to be working with Smart Trace on. So what Smart Trace is, or what it does, is it searches for your paper or your drawing surface by detecting 4 corners. So that's why I have this dark black paper underneath my paper that I'm creating on, because white paper on a white table, even if all 4 corners are in frame, the app might not be able to detect it. So that's why I have this darker surface, but as long as your desk or table, whatever it is you're working on, is darker than your paper and everything is in frame, you should be good to go.
Can you do a rerun from the home feed? How do you go to my studio to the flower?
Yes, I can. I'll do it again. Okay, so I'm just gonna exit out, go back to the home feed, and look at that, we got a time lapse. Anytime that you have Trace open for more than 30 seconds, the app will automatically generate a time lapse of your creation. So obviously we won't have anything going on here, so we'll just skip that for now, but they all save for you. So you can just share your creation outside of the app, wow your friends and family, some really cool stuff. Okay, so we're on the main feed. What we're going to do is we're going to tap My Studio, that plus sign icon at the bottom of our screen in the center. Tap that. And to get to what we're working with today, we're going to tap Gallery. And we're just going to select any one of these rows outlines. So if you want to create alongside with me, step by step with the same thing, I'm choosing rows 1. I see that green check mark. I know I'm good to head to start. And again, all 4 corners of my paper visible to my camera. The app is able to find it and superimpose my outline right onto it. So I'll bring my transparency all the way up so you can see. But if you're not working with a device stand, you can't, extend the neck, and you're working with just like a cup or placing your phone flat on top of something, you can use the wide angle camera feature to make sure that all 4 corners are in frame. So work regular lens, Smart Trace on, and I am going to use the drag feature to kind of make my rows a little bit bigger so you can all see clearly what I'm doing. And I think what I'll do is I'll trace everything kind of as is, but leave out these leaves here at the bottom. So I'll make it a bit more centered. Beauty of the drag feature. And now we can pinch the screen to zoom in and just look through our screen, grab our pencil, make that connection, and just follow the lines that you see on your screen. So I'm going to bring my transparency bar down a bit. And normally I would use a pretty light hand to trace, but I will add a bit more pressure so you can all see more clearly. But I'm just following the lines. I'll make my way to all those details. This is something that you can choose to, add with your pencil as you're tracing, or you can add this detail as you're bringing your flower to life with color. And you just get a super precise outline that just serves as the foundation, the jumping off point for any creation. So even if you know how to draw, you're a skilled artist, saves you a lot of time with, nailing proportions and composition, all that good stuff. And I figured, with Valentine's Day being around the corner, why not draw a rose? I know flowers are very popular. So you can, just take this time to create with me, explore the app, get to know it a little bit, or you can, just turn this rose into the most beautiful handmade card for Valentine's Day. Of a beautiful rose that won't perish. All right.
Everything is going to be recorded so they can see tomorrow.
Yes. Yep. Just to reiterate, this will be available on demand on YouTube tomorrow. So if you miss anything, you can definitely check back tomorrow. But I'm just taking my time tracing. You see all these areas where you have some shading. You can choose to kind of shade that in with your pencil to kind of mark, the shadow is going to go here. So this outline can be quite helpful when it comes to, that, bringing it to life. I think what I'll do, I'll just kind of make sure that I'm tracing all of my lines. And when I see that there's like, a fold in the petal, I'll know to add some shadow. Speaking of Valentine's Day, I'm curious if anyone has plans. Let us know in the chat. Shirley will let me know, I'm sure of it. Because it could inspire my plans for Valentine's Day. I've got nothing going on at the moment, but I will be doing something. It's just a matter of what. So drop your ideas or your plans in the chat. I'm curious. All right, I think I've got everything traced for the most part with my flower. You can bring that transparency bar down to see only your lines. So I know I'm good to move on and head to the stem.
Luke is staying home.
Sorry?
Luke says he's staying home.
Luke is staying home. Nothing wrong with that. I love staying home. Are you kidding me? If I had the option, which I do, and I have free will, I'm a homebody for sure. And I think there's nothing wrong with that.
He's drink hot chocolate.
Drink hot chocolate. I thought that was going somewhere else. That sounds lovely. I haven't had hot chocolate in a while. Got to take advantage of the winter, and it's maybe you like the winter, but I don't love it. It's, a fun little thing that I can enjoy really only in the winter. I don't know if I could have a hot cocoa in the summer.
It's been a long time since I've had hot chocolate. It's been an even longer time since I've had hot chocolate with marshmallows.
Oh, hot chocolate with marshmallows. Classic. I drowned mine in marshmallows. I'm finishing up my outline here. So I just want to let everyone know that I'm about to put my phone to the side in just a moment. But you might notice that I'm not, I'm kind of loosening up as I go, right? We're not following it, to an exact T, because the amount of precision you get here with tracing is, it's otherworldly. So you can make it your own. You can simplify certain areas. You can simplify your tracing and then, get more detailed with your color. Whatever works for you. So yes, just to reiterate, I did not shade in all those areas that you see here in the outline. I know that, with petals are kind of folding over, they're overlapping, there's going to be some shadow. So as we work with the color to bring it to life, I'll walk you through my process, my thought process, and my approach, all that good stuff. So I'm going to put my device to the side.
Just as a quick recap, you're not going to do the tracing of how do you get from the home feed to the tracing.
Yes. Okay, so one more time before I put my device to the side, I'll show you if you came in a few minutes late or you just want to reiterate. Look at that time lapse, love it. From the main feed, how do you get to tracing what I just traced? At the bottom of your screen, My Studio tab in the center, that little plus sign icon, tap that. You can upload a photo of a rose and trace that instead, or you can use one of the outlines that I just used. Rose 1, select the one you want to trace. Tap Start when you see that green check mark. And as long as all 4 corners of your paper are visible against a dark background to create a contrast, the app can find your paper and superimpose your outline right onto it. And as you can see, the drag where you positioned your outline stays. So if you wanted to come back to a creation, you absolutely can. I don't know, if something happens in the middle of tracing, you just have to stop whatever you're doing right now. You know that you can always go back and it will be ideally positioned where you intended it to be positioned. So if you have a half outline, incomplete outline, you should be good to go. All right. Are we good? Can I? Okay. So I'm going to put my device to the side here. Nick, is that all right? All right with you?
Yeah, I'll probably have you.
The artwork?
Yeah, unless, I mean, you can leave it there also if you like. But
Yeah, I'll bring the paper down a little bit. By the way, the reason why I'm taping everything, you don't have to tape your stuff down. Sometimes it helps if you have like a paper where the corners are kind of lifting. Of course, a flat paper is better for the app to recognize your paper. But the reason why I'm taping mine down is just make sure that everything is centered and I'm not going out of frame, but I'm also using this black as a guideline. I'm just gonna put that tape to the side, don't mind me. And what I'm gonna do before I even start coloring is I'm gonna take my kneaded eraser and I'm going to kind of just roll it up and soften my lines. So this is why I love a kneaded eraser. It's not necessary, but because I went in with a bit of a heavier hand than I normally would, I definitely want to soften my marks because I don't want them shining through my markers too much. It's okay if you do. You see how it's just kind of picking up.
It looks completely disappearing.
Does it look like it's disappearing? I can go over my lines then. No? Okay. My outline is still there. Nick, what do you think? Should I go over it?
I mean, I can just about see it.
You can just about see it? Okay. Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's get started, shall we? So like I said, I've got a few colors. I also have a little scrap paper to kind of test so I can choose the colors I want to use. But basically, for both the rose, the flower itself, and the stem and the leaves, we're going to use 2 to 3 colors. So you want like your base color, your mid-tone color, which will be a classic red, kind of like a shadow color, which will be like, ideally a darker red. And then for really harsh shadows, you can do black. So I've got black here, and I've got a couple shades of red to choose from. So let me swatch and see. I've got my dark red, Sangria. Just going to kind of swatch. I like to use the brush side. Okay, that's a nice dark, almost purpley kind of red. Got a poppy red, that's beautiful, but I think this one's a bit of a cooler red rose. I mean, we have to, right? We have to. It's called red rose. Let's do it. Okay. So these will be like my 3 shades for the rose. And by the way, I'm teaching you the technique that works for me with this tool, this medium. You might find that other people have different techniques. I don't think that art is really one size fits all. It's, whatever you decide, what techniques work for you, what approaches work for you. So I'll teach you what I know and what works for me. I also have a blending tool. Okay, so this will be great for highlights. Now, what I like to do with the blender is I like to start with the blender. and kind of map out where my highlights are going to be. Typically, you won't have, the velvety kind of texture of rose petals. You won't really have much of a highlight going on. But if I were to add some highlights, whoa, if I were to add some highlights, I'd throw things. Okay. It could be, right along, just want to make sure I don't have any pigment on here, along the edge, right? Because if we think about it, this petal is over these two petals. So we'll have like a highlight right here to create that separation. And on the other side, we'll have some shadow to create some separation. And here, maybe a little bit of a highlight here. And I know you probably can't see it on camera. Yeah, you definitely can't see it on camera, but you can see it IRL, if you will. But just wanted to show you that this is a technique that you can do. You can start with your blender and then go right in with your mid-tone shade. So I like to use the brush side. I'm going to start by kind of outlining everything once so you can all see clearly what I'm doing. I'll use this shade to outline everything, and then we'll start to kind of color it all in. And then we'll layer our shadow colors on top. But again, our first little bit of color. So don't worry about any mistakes, for lack of a better word, at this point. We're just getting started. Oh, who watched the Grammys last night? Let me know. I love watching any red carpet event strictly just for the fashion. I have no sense of fashion, so I like to see.
There's a question, why the colorless blender first?
That is a great question. Okay, so someone asked why the colorless blender first. So typically, if you wanted to kind of create highlights, you'll kind of mark those highlights with the blender and then kind of color everything in around it. By the way, you definitely don't have to start with the blender. I mean, with the rose, say, for example, you're drawing like a cherry, with the same colors. A cherry, you definitely want to go in with the colorless blender to map out your highlights before you do anything because it's shiny. There's a glare, light reflects off of it. A rose, not really, because it's kind of like velvety, almost like matte. So, and of course, you guys can't even see where I put the blender. So I'm going to just say, forget the blender for this. But typically, with things that are kind of shiny, we'll do it with the stem, by the way. We'll do it with the stem. This kind of maps out where your highlights go. And then when you kind of blend your color into it, you kind of meet the two, the colorless blender and your color, have them meet. It's a diffused edge. So maybe I'll show you really quick just on one area that I highlighted, this area over here. If I were to kind of color in this whole area, I would avoid where I kind of placed the blender to start. Good? Okay. Now this is me just kind of switching gears here to show you the blender. But I would kind of slowly move that color towards where I placed the colorless blender. And then I would go right in with the colorless blender on top of that color and diffuse that edge, right? So we're kind of creating a soft transition from color to no color. And that is typically what I would use this colorless blender for. Forgive me, I got ahead of myself and did it on a rose where I didn't really need to. So the blender is great for blending really any colors together, specifically your highlight and your midtone colors. We'll use this a bit more with the stem and the leaves where we would imagine there are some glare, some highlights. But I hope that answered your question. Let's continue. I'm just going to color right on top of that. But I'm going to start kind of filling in everything, but also kind of map out mentally where my shadows are going to go, because I don't want to color everything in completely and then lose track of, where I wanted to put those shadows. So we had a little line here. We can imagine that there is some shadow, some shading here where that petal kind of curves and this part kind of falls back. You can imagine that all over here, it's red, but as we kind of approach that edge where this petal overlaps here, there'll be a shadow. Same thing with this line and the petal underneath this little flap. So we'll color this in red. Leave that for a shadow. Same thing over here. So kind of imagine that each petal is like its own section, but also keep in mind, how does that section work with the section next to it? How are they affecting each other? Again, following this little curve, leaving that for some shadow. Leaving this area for some shadow, and then filling this in. So wherever there's a line, there's going to be like a shadow and a highlight, basically. Wherever there's a highlight, there's a shadow. Wherever there's a shadow, there's a highlight, and vice versa. Good rule of thumb. And then really with if you ask me, any kind of realistic look that you want to achieve, no matter what tool or medium you're using, if you want to achieve a realistic look, it's a lot of back and forth, a lot of layering, a lot of blending. And practice, practice makes progress because perfection does not exist. We can get pretty close to it with practice. All right. So now let's start to fill in those shadow areas with our darker red, our sangria. All right. So kind of just go in and wherever there is an overlap, whenever there's a petal kind of shining over or hanging over petal underneath it, add some shadow there. Let's create separation between the petals. We'll start with just enough of this color to fill in areas we haven't yet, and then we'll go back in with our first color, our base color, and we'll kind of blend it out, and then we'll go in with the black. A little bit less, a bit more contained. We'll blend that out with this color, and hopefully you get the gist.
If you follow the first color, now you want to go over it with a darker one, can you do that?
You absolutely can. So if you were to color, let me say the question again if you can't hear what Shirley said, but sorry, Shirley, one more time. If you color all
everything with the original.
Yep.
Over.
Yep, and then you can layer with a darker color. I would say that's why we start from kind of like from light to dark, because when you start to kind of layer a lighter color on top of a dark color, that's when things can go south. Yeah, not work as well. Sometimes you'll get success. Of course, we're going to be doing a lot of back and forth after we lay all these colors down. But I think if you have that first color, that base light, that is, you'll be good to go. Good question. And again, that's just from my experience working with this medium. Yes, these are the Artist Loft alcohol-based markers. You have tons of different brands and options to choose from. But they're pretty straightforward. They're a lot more affordable, and they're quite good. These are what I use at home. I don't use anything too fancy. It gets the job done. I know this is typically a more, I guess, advanced or elevated medium. It tends to be higher quality and, a bit more expensive than your water-based markers or anything like that. Colored pencils, all that good stuff. All right, so we're about to move on and go back in with that first color and blend. Start to blend these two colors together, soften the separation between these two colors. All right, so going back in with that first color, let's go right on top of this purpley red, right on the line that separates these two colors. Just go over and just kind of blend. Pretty straightforward. you'll start to see a difference. Maybe not right away, but when it dries for sure. But look at that compared to something over here. The importance of layering, going back and forth and repeating steps. Just doing a little bit less as you go, as you get darker. It'll be more or less the same exact approach with the stem and the leaves. I also find these tools, or this tool specifically, just very relaxing to use. I'm noticing that I'm just getting really quiet. It's because I'm enjoying the process. It's very satisfying material, in my opinion. When you find a tool that you love, that just makes it that much more enjoyable. All right, so we're looking good. You can start to see the dimension. You can definitely stop after 2 colors if you're happy with the look that you achieved, but let's add some of that real dark shadow with just a little bit of black. So we'll just keep our shadows more contained. So let's say right about here, we can assume there's a shadow that's quite dark, and then it kind of slowly softens and gets lighter with that purpley kind of red color. Anywhere you see a line or a separation, petal hanging over another petal, add some black. And it's a lot easier to add more black than it is to take it away. With this tool, once it's on, it's on. So take it slow.
Can you achieve this look with water-based markers?
Can you achieve this look with water-based markers? I think to a certain extent, you absolutely can. Yeah, you can definitely blend. I find that blending is easier with water-based colors because if you're working with it while it's wet, you can really mix colors very easily. But I would say the finish of blending with alcohol-based markers is a lot softer, a lot more seamless. From my experience, again, you might find someone who's really skilled with water-based markers and they can achieve, like a photorealistic kind of look. It's all about preference and experimenting. Yeah, I find that you can definitely create a realistic look with water-based, but not as realistic. All right. Almost done with the flower. Almost time to move on to the stem and the leaves. But first, we're going to blend out this shadow color. Okay. All right. A little bit more towards the center. Now let's go back in and repeat the same steps. Just blend and soften. Go right on top of the black with your purple or your dark red, your first shadow color. You can even extend the area that this color covers. Create more dimension, but you can always just go back in and add little by little. The more you layer, the more you blend, the more you soften, the more realistic of a look you'll achieve. And again, I think that's really with any medium, if you ask me. Something I really love to do if I want to achieve something really realistic, like I want to kick it up a notch. Sometimes I'll go in with colored pencil on top of my marker because it's, sorry?
Pauline is asking what kind of paper are you using? Don't you have to worry about oversaturating material?
Yes, so great question. Oh, sorry, what was the name? Pauline? Hi, Pauline. Great question. I mentioned this earlier. I'm using marker paper. So definitely you want to keep that in mind. If you're using like a mixed media paper, after your second or third layer, you'll definitely start to experiencing some bleeding through on the other side. But something that is soft, thick, and not too textured, like this marker paper, is definitely the way to go. Bristol board paper, that's a great option as well.
What about watercolor paper?
Watercolor paper, I would say that's a great question. I would probably assume that it's similar to mixed media paper, definitely typically thicker. So you might not have as much bleeding through on the other side, but you don't have that smooth surface that you can create like those soft, seamless blends of color. But I actually, if I'm being honest, I haven't tried on watercolor paper. That's a good question. I would assume it wouldn't be, the results that you achieve wouldn't be as strong because of the texture on the paper. Whereas with watercolor, you need that texture.
Another question from Susie.
Hi,
Can we
Susie.
use alcohol-based markers for sketchbook drawing?
Absolutely. So the question from Susie, hi Susie, thank you. Can you use alcohol-based markers for sketchbook drawing? It depends on what kind of sketchbook you're using. But if it's quite literally sketching paper, you can use these, but you might lose a couple of pages in your sketchbook or your notebook or your journal, whatever it is, because of the bleeding through on the other side. I do know that there are some like marker pads or sketchbook pads with a similar kind of paper, one that's not as thin or as textured or rough as like sketchbook paper. Yeah, you can absolutely use these on any surface. Just keep in mind, the thinner the paper, the more bleeding you'll get. And even still, we get bleeding to the other side. But if this was in a pad, if you kept your paper in the pad, it won't transfer to the paper underneath. I hope that makes sense. But one last thing that I can do, you can leave it at this, but you can go back in with that first color again to create more of a blend. But I think just in certain areas where I really want to soften that transition of color, I'll go in with that first shade. I added a little bit of a shadow towards the end of the petals, just randomly, just cause, you can imagine that maybe some of these areas the petal is kind of folding over, or maybe the petals are starting to wilt. Even with an outline that you're working off of, something that's so precise, you can make it your own. You can, you have decisions to make along the way.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you for answering my question.
You are so very welcome, Susie. I'm glad that helped. Great questions, by the way, really great questions. Nick, are you on the microphone? Not on a microphone. Tisk, tisk. People want to hear from you, Nick. Yeah. Let me know if you can hear Nick. If you can't, drop a tisk tisk in the chat. Okay, friends, I'm done with my rows. Like I said, I can continue adding, if we go back in with the black and the purple, then the red and the black and the purple and the red, and add just a little bit more as we go, you can create something that's really, really realistic. But I think this is a good place to stop with the rows. Could I get a time check? 4:49. All right, so typically we'd be finishing up in like, what, 10 minutes? I don't know if it's okay that we go a little bit over. Nicole, I don't know if you want to let us know in the chat, but we'll be quick. What's nice is that this is the same exact steps, just different colors. So let me grab, of course, my black still. I'm going to grab my blender. I have one shade of green and another. I think that's good. These two colors.
Should be fine. I believe there is a 15-minute leeway.
Okay, 15-minute leeway. I won't keep you all too long. What's nice, again, it's just to repeat the steps. Yep. Oh, okay. All right. So I will show you the colorless blender for this part. We can imagine that there might be some shine on the stem and on the leaves. So we can kind of decide what side we think there's like a highlight. So let's go ahead and choose the right side. If I were to go just along the lines here, not really worrying about the thorns right now, just the stem, I'm going to just take my colorless blender and just saturate this edge. I'll go in with my lighter shade of green, starting all the way over here on the side that we're going to kind of darken up. We'll kind of fill in towards the center, but I won't go on top of my blender yet, so leaving some space. I'd imagine that at the base here, right underneath the flower, we might not have a shadow because those petals are, or excuse me, a highlight, because those petals are casting a shadow. Go right back in with the blender and right on that edge where the green stops, kind of blend and soften. And we can kind of shrink this highlight area as we build up the color. And of course, you might want to, define that edge with that same green while leaving some of that space and go right back in with the blender. And as it dries, create a nice soft highlight. I'm going to go in with my darker green. I'm going to keep it more contained on this side. But then right beneath the flower, extend it a bit. Back in with that first shade of green. Diffuse the two colors together. You can even shrink the highlight area at this point. Because no matter what, we're layering less color in this area, so it will be lighter than the rest. We'll just get the thorns. Typically you see more of like a pink in the thorns. So you can kind of color the base light green. Blend it out with the blender. And then when it dries, maybe you can even go in with like a little bit of pink. Let's do that. I do have a pink. It'll create more of a funky, organic kind of look. And go back in, the highlight, blend that out. And then you can even go in with the black as well, maybe a little bit up here. Be right underneath the stem of the leaves. And then back in with a slightly lighter color. So I will do one leaf, that one center one here. And then just know that the approach to all the other leaves will be exactly the same. Right after I blend this lighter green. But I think hopefully by now you guys get the gist. how to work with these markers. One of my favorite tools. And this is just a technique that works for me, you know? Let's do just a little bit of a highlight here, kind of like on the left top side of the leaf. We'll kind of fill in the entire leaf, avoiding where we just put the colorless blender for now. Then we'll go in with our blender yet again and soften that edge. Beautiful. And then let's start to darken things up. Let's go in with this darker green. Let's get the stem, connect it to the big stem. We'll kind of focus some shadow at the bottom. Start. We think about, where the highlight is, maybe we'll have on the opposite side of the leaf down here, a bit darker. Great balance. Maybe at the tip, just a little bit along the edges, those frayed edges of the leaves. And then I'm just going to turn it a bit for a sec. Let's start to define the lines and the details in the leaves. Kind of have them meet the frayed edges a bit. Go back in with our first green. And start to incorporate a bit more of that light green into the highlight area, just to soften it. And then we can go in with just a little bit of black. Maybe at the center, towards the bottom. Maybe at the bottom of the stem. And back in with that darker green. Back to that first green. And then after it dries, I can go in with that darker green and replace those details and the lines without blending them out and softening them. That is pretty much it, my friends. I know we sped up a little bit at the end, but like I said, more or less, the steps are the same. It's a lot of going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But to summarize, working from light to dark, and always, always, always blending. I hope you learned something, like how to work with these tools. Like I said, they're one of my favorites. There's plenty more tutorials to follow along to on demand on the Cupixel app. Tons of different categories, quite a few with me using these tools. So if you want to learn more how to work with them, some more techniques, great. Again, this class will be on demand on YouTube tomorrow on Learn with Michael's YouTube channel. But I do so appreciate all of you who joined me and created with me in real time today. Thank you so much for asking all your questions. And if you have any further questions, feel free to tap the question mark icon at the top right of your screen on the app. We have a support team that's here to answer any of your questions 24/7, real people helping your real problems. I don't know. I think that's it. Shirley, is there anything else I should add?
No, just people are happy with the class. They want to say
Great.
thank you.
Thank you. Also, you can share your work with me on Spaces.
sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let me bring the phone back in. Nick, is that okay? Right here, okay?
Actually, want to
Good? All right. So, hey, let's go back to start. And let's go to Spaces. Typically with any experience, an artist-led experience, you get, me on demand, walking you through the process. You'll see these 4 tabs at the bottom, but Spaces right here. Hey, this is from our last Michael's class. Very cool. You can share your artwork to the My Studio Spaces by just tapping that camera icon. Snap a pic of your artwork. Write a caption if you'd like, but I will be checking Spaces. If you do want to share, I'll finish that later. I was looking for the rose emoji. But yes, I'd love to see how your roses turned out if you created with me. So please do share if that's something you're interested in. And check out everything else that we have to offer on the app. This is just the tip of the iceberg, so there's something for everybody. And plenty more to do, plenty more to create. We will be back for another Learn with Michael's class in March, so I hope to see you all there. Thank you so much for joining me and creating with me today. I appreciate you all. Happy Valentine's Day, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.